From the center of the universe and the home of your Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts, it's the X's and Argos podcast.
Welcome to the X's and Argos pregame walkthrough, brought to you by Something in the Water Brewing. Ben Grant, joined as always by JB, as we get you set for the Toronto Argonauts' third to last game. This one against the Ottawa Redblacks, and it is the last home game for the Boatmen before the East Final. Before we get into a lot of stuff that we got to get to today, let me tell you about Something in the Water Brewing. If you get a chance, this Saturday is perfect because it's the last regular season home game. It's on a Saturday. Get down to Something in the Water pregame. JB and I will be down there as well. Grab yourself a longboat, the beer dedicated to fans of the Double Blue, or you could try something else if you want to too. They've got tons of award-winning beers. You can't go wrong with it. Even if you want to go the non-alcoholic route, there are a couple of great recommendations I have. They've got this peach fizzy iced tea that is just amazing. There's also hop water, which is becoming one of my favorites, and I've done that a few times when I've been down there pregame. Try it out. It's just steps from BMO Field. It's also just steps from Lamport Stadium where the Argos practice. Make sure you visit Something in the Water Brewing. Maybe we'll see you there on Saturday before the game. Tons of stuff to get into, JB. We've got All-Star voting to talk about. We've got the Argos being considered heavy Grey Cup favorites right now. People want to rant about Drake's chain and generally about the Argos not receiving enough publicity. We'll talk about that a little bit. Plus, the signing of Carlton Agudosi from Winnipeg. That's pretty big news in the Toronto world. We'll get into that a little bit. Plus, we've got injury news, the game preview, OCDC one thing, predictions, put me down for 20, and CFL picks. All that more is coming up on this episode of the X's and Argos podcast. All right, news and notes. JB, let's start with Carlton Agudosi, the signing there. I think this one is an interesting one. You're always for picking up new guys, especially when they're coming from good teams. What was your initial reaction with the signing of Agudosi?
Yeah, I mean, I really liked him for Winnipeg. I mean, obviously he's an impressive individual from measurables. He will always seem like an ideal red zone target in terms of being able to box out guys and go jump a fade in the end zone. So he's definitely worth a shot, I think. And if he knows things about Winnipeg, that's also kind of useful.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're not familiar with Agudosi, he did play with the Bombers. Like last year, he got off to a sensational start with Winnipeg, ended up suffering a season-ending injury. This year wasn't quite the same. He started a few games at the beginning of the season, and then when Kenny Lawler was brought back, he was relegated to the practice squad and then released after that. And so picking him up to me makes sense, not just based on the Winnipeg production, but I do think that in itself warrants a look. When you've got any of the good CFL teams, when they've got guys who are starting at some point in the season, I know it's not right now, but at some point, Winnipeg, who's been a good team all year long, releases a guy, I'm completely in favor of bringing him in because he has that starting experience there, and you want to see what he can do. Now, his measurables are bananas, and that's one thing that has, I think, tempted so many coaches. They've brought him in because they look at his measurables and they're like, these are not normal. Like, first of all, he's almost 6'6", 217. He's a huge target, but his beyond that, like, he's fast. He ran a 4.6 flat. He's got a 40 plus inch vertical, 40.5 inch vertical, I think he had, which is just like for any size. That's a huge vertical. For a guy that's almost 6'6", that puts you so much further ahead. And he's got the wingspan on top of that. Like you can throw the ball like above the uprights, and he should be able to come down with that, which is an amazing catch radius. He ran a 6.793 cone. A 4.793 cone would be really something. Yeah, 6.793 cone, which again, for a guy that size is highly unusual. And so coaches didn't really know what to do with him. I talked to a reporter in Arizona yesterday after the signing was made, and I asked him a little bit because he spent some time down there with the Cardinals, there for 2 seasons down with the Cardinals. And they said, yeah, like they just had trouble kind of figuring him out. And Bruce Arians was sort of driven up the wall a little bit by him because he looked at the measurables and looked at the production that he had at Rutgers, and they didn't really match up. And he's like, we got to find a way to use this guy. He's got so much skill and ability. Let's find a way to get this guy the ball. And it's just for some reason, every step along the way, he went to the Eagles after that, played in the XFL a little bit, went to Winnipeg. Every coach is going to look at this guy and say, we have to find a way to do it. Now, there's no pressure in Toronto. They don't need to throw him in there right away, but they're going to have an opportunity, probably the last week of the season, when Toronto matches up in Ottawa. That's probably where you'll get to see Agudosi and really test him out and say, let's see if we can get some of his skill set working for us, because he's clearly got something special. There just aren't athletes that size that can do the things he does.
No, he will forever get chances. I mean, usually, traditionally, guys who have off the charts measurables and get 100 chances, you immediately discover what the issue is. But I like the move, and if he can be a red zone possession target for Kelly, I'm all for working on that little bit. He doesn't really bring anything new to the wide receiver room, but yeah, I think it's worth a gamble. Why not? But I wouldn't get that excited, because usually if a guy is at like one team and they don't know how to use him, but usually when you get up to 4, 5, 6 teams, there's usually some things that you find that don't really click.
Now, injuries have been an issue pretty much everywhere he's gone. There's been some issues, and that, of course, happened in Winnipeg too. But I agree with what you're saying. So, yeah, grain of salt, let's see. But there's no harm in this move at all. There's only upside. So, for me, I love the move. I think it's a great signing for Toronto. JB, the All-Star voting, I don't want to start with a rant, but I really want to rant about the All-Star voting. It's not like it's been perfect previously. I don't know why this rendition is making me more angry than before. So it is time to vote for All-Stars, and I would encourage you, as a devoted listener to an Argos podcast, you should get out there and vote for the Argos in the various different positions. Cast your ballot. It's difficult to do so, and I'm going to walk you through some of that. First of all, even finding how to vote took me a little bit. JB, how long did it take you to get onto the site where you actually do vote?
Not bad. It was easy. I will say, #genius. It was easier than the nightmare that was picking a fantasy team that listeners may have noticed we quickly abandoned, and I abandoned because that was just the worst. So I will say it was an improvement on that, if that is a faint compliment.
So for me, I found this process frustrating because I went to the CFL website. I knew there were links that you could click. I saw links on Twitter, and I know there are links all over social media. But I decided, okay, I'll just go to the CFL homepage. And from there, you look at all of the different drop downs along the top. Which one do you click? You click the ... That is the drop down that you click. And then from there, you click Game Zone. From there, you then click All-Star Vote Now, which that one makes sense, but we're already into 3 clicks here. Your 4th click is CFL All-Star Team Selection. And now you are finally able to select your All-Stars. So you have to go looking for it. It took me, again, maybe I'm not computer savvy enough to do this. I am not genius enough to do it. But it just seemed to me, when you go to CFL.ca, there should be a big banner right there. All-Star, click here, directly to your page. That would solve a lot of problems. And I know there are a lot of CFL fans my age looking to vote for All-Stars. So you may have gone through what I went through. And then we get to the actual setup. What has, again, been a point of frustration for me for a while now is the way this is set up. It is not looking at quarterbacks, kickers, punters. it's not the same as looking at receivers and DBs. There are so many receivers and DBs. The fact that you only get to vote for one is maddening. I get only getting to vote for one quarterback. You should only get to vote for one quarterback. You should only get to vote for one kicker, one punter. Absolutely. To vote for one receiver and one DB is beyond my understanding. And to add to that frustration, they don't even have all of them. And so for Toronto receivers, there are 6 Toronto receivers you can choose from, but there's only 44 in the entire league. So there are a number of receivers on other teams that have not shown up, that aren't on there at all. And so Toronto's lucky, I guess, in that regard with receivers, although that's also going to split voting. But yeah, most teams only have 4 receivers that you can choose from, despite the fact that they start 5 every week. And there are similar issues with DBs as well. But the biggest issue I have with DB is that a lot of the best DBs have been shelved under linebacker. And this is, JB, we've talked about cover linebackers and needing another distinction for this enough times that we don't need to repeat it. But if you want to vote for Adarius Pickett, for example, he's listed as a DB on the Toronto roster. You have to vote for him as a linebacker. Lucius Purifoy for Edmonton, if you wanted to vote for him, no, he's not a safety, linebacker. There's a number of guys like that are clearly DBs, and yet they're going up against the Adam Bighills, the Wyndham McManuses of the league. That's the category that they're in. So the entire setup bothers me. The last thing I'll get to you, JB, I'll let you speak, I promise. The last thing is for the alphabetizing of names. That too I have issues with. Like, you look at quarterbacks, you think, okay, Chad Kelly. It's not like Chad Kelly starting with Z and you expect it to have to scroll down a long way. Chad Kelly's the 15th quarterback on the list. You have to go down a ways to find Chad Kelly on a list. It shouldn't be sorted this way. You should have the 9 quarterbacks that you believe have a chance at the very top. So you're not scrolling down halfway through this list to try and find guys. And it's such a random collection of candidates on there too. To have this many quarterbacks and yet only 44
right,
receivers?
Exactly. I mean, first of all, there has to be some, I understand it's difficult, but I mean, you do have to make some decisions. I mean, clearly there are quarterbacks on there who are not going to be an all-star. And I don't think it's outrageous for the league to decide, like, okay, this quarterback who has no snaps or starts is not going to be an all-star this year.
Jared Dagey's on there. Like, yeah. Again, no disrespect to Jared Dagey, but you're not voting for him as an all-star. Even if you love the Edmonton Elks, you're not voting for him as an all-star.
No, you have to curate that list a little bit. And I understand that it's simpler not to curate because then you don't have any headaches. But, like, I agree. I mean, I agree. Like, it's fine. But I agree. I agree with your frustrations. Like, why not split defensive line into defensive tackle and defensive end? Those are 2 distinct positions. They have different skill sets and, are as different as running back and wide receiver in a lot of ways. With defensive backs, what do you do with the cover backer? Why not make up your own category for cover backer? It is distinctly CFLian. Want to make a decision and call these people cover backers as opposed to linebackers, or go with what the team has them registered as. I don't understand why Pickett is a linebacker. Like, who decided that? The league office?
I think so.
Because you can't just call him a linebacker. If the Argos call him a defensive back, then he's a defensive back. I mean, it doesn't matter where he lines up. So I'm not sure who made that decision. Yeah, I mean, I think that's not getting too into the weeds. Like, I don't mind wide receiver. Wide receiver is wide receiver. There should be more than one, but I don't think you need to get into slot and outside. But there should be more than one wide receiver, and offensive line. Okay, I mean, maybe guard and tackle is too much, but there certainly should be more than one. If you're not going to subdivide, you should open that up a tiny bit, but. I think those are frustrations. I think on the whole it's okay, but it could be better. I mean, you would like it to be run like like it's being run by football people, but I don't think that's the case.
It was better run. I remember as a kid. Well, you didn't spend a lot of your childhood in Toronto, but like I remember going to Jays games with the ballots and pushing the little pencil through the little holes in the ballot and handing those in as my All-Star voting. That's like 40 years ago. And I feel like that was run more smoothly. So I feel like we've regressed a little bit here. I know it's a different sport, but that ballot was solid. I never had a complaint about those ballots. So if you can do it then, back in the 80s, surely you can figure out a way to do this a little bit more user-friendly, a bit more inclusive to players that should be on there, and exclusive
and you
as well.
You should open it up for sure. Like you should be, that with only one spot for some of those positions, you're just leaving a lot of people out of the mix.
Let's get into the actual choices here. And Toronto fans, you do have to be a little strategic because of the way this is set up, because you don't get multiple votes. And it's tough with Toronto's team because there's so many positions where there aren't necessarily runaway candidates, where you've got a few quality guys who both or all three could very well be All-Stars, and yet because of the system probably won't. So let's go through it. So quarterback is obvious. Chad Kelly, not just as an Argo bias, I think he should be an All-Star. I think Chad Kelly should be the most outstanding player in the CFL based on what he's done this season. And so it makes absolute sense that you put Chad Kelly down as quarterback.
Yeah, obviously, to be honest, I'm okay if he is not. I think it's been kind of an unusual season. It's been a terrific season, but I wouldn't say necessarily statistically he's blown the roof off. I couldn't be happier with him as our quarterback. That doesn't mean he has to be an All-Star.
He'll be an East All-Star for sure, but probably not a CFL All-Star. That's probably how it's going to end up going, unless the West ends up splitting their votes with the Vernon Adams camp and the Zach Caleros camp. We'll have to see how that goes. Next up is wide receiver. This one's interesting because I'm not sure there is a Toronto candidate for wide receiver. I love Toronto's wide receiver room, but I love how you can go to anybody in that room. There's nobody that stands out. If you look at like the CFL stats page, which is largely up and working for this season, if you go to look at receptions, you have to actually get to page 2 before you find somebody for Toronto, and that's Tavares Daniels with 40 catches. But there are, I think, 27 guys ahead of him in terms of receptions, so you have to work your way down to find it. And so should an Argo receiver be an All-Star, seeing as the Argo receiver with the most catches is 27th in the league in receptions? See,
I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so either.
If you are voting for an Argo, I think probably Coxie or Daniels or Phillips, I guess, but he's been out for a little while now and will continue to be. So, but that's one where I think you can find a league favorite and say, is there another receiver that you're interested in voting for? For running back, AJ Ouellette is the automatic Argo answer. Yeah, does he deserve to be an All-Star?
Right. Yeah, Ouellette, what's that?
To me, he will. I think he will be an East All-Star.
Absolutely, he is the definition of an All-Star. I think he's dominant at his position, and he has had an impact in every game he's played. He is one of the primary reasons the team has been so successful.
And I think Brady Oliveira probably ends up taking that league-wide, but definitely East All-Star for AJ Ouellette. And I love his pass protection as well. And that's something that doesn't get talked about enough because it's subtle. It's more quiet. He's really good at it, and he's made some key pickups in the last few games too.
and the juice he brings. That's an underrated aspect, but you got to have those dogs, and he brings a juice to the offense that they wouldn't have otherwise. And as a coach, you dream of having that kind of juice on offense. So that aspect also is huge and worthy of All-Star recognition.
For offensive line, this one's interesting because I think the best offensive lineman on the team is Dejon Allen. I don't think he's going to win the All-Star vote. And if you only get one, maybe it makes more sense to back an inside player. JB, who are you looking at on the offensive line?
Yeah, I agree with Allen. I love Ryan Hunter. I think that he has been the sort of secret sauce that when they added him last year, everything clicked into place. Having him this year has made them incredibly successful. I think that he is, quietly one of the biggest signings they've made in the last 3 years. I think his his value to the team, his flexibility, his ability, it has just been unbelievable. I just think it's one of those things where it doesn't get talked about very much, but he is a cornerstone. If I were going to pick like 4 cornerstones, I would make him one of the cornerstones of this new Grey Cup challenging Argo era.
Yeah, I agree, and I think just as a guard, he's outstanding. But like you talked about too, he's versatile. He ended up finishing the game at right tackle last time out.
He's like a consummate professional offensive lineman. I mean, it's unbelievable the way they added him, and again, the way nobody talks about him.
Linebacker is next. We're on to the defensive side. I don't know what to do here because it's got to be McManus or Pickett, right?
Yeah, I mean, I still am for Pickett for defensive player, but not at linebacker. I'm not going to participate in this. He is a defensive back. Wynton McManus is the best linebacker in the East, if not the league. He is a linebacker. Pickett is a defensive back, and I'm not participating in that All-Star shenanigans.
I agree, and it's unfortunate for Pickett. It's unfortunate for a few guys on this list, but I think the correct linebacker vote goes to Wynton McManus. I think he might be the best linebacker in the league. He's certainly in the conversation, and he's hot right now too.
Yeah,
2 touchdowns in the last 3 games.
But
3 picks.
I'm still supporting Pickett for defensive, player.
Yeah,
but I'm not going to make. He's not the best linebacker. He's not even a linebacker, for God's sakes.
Defensive line. This one for me is a little easier because I have felt all season long that Hendricks is the guy.
Yes.
So I think that's an easy vote for Toronto fans.
There should be more than one. Like again, the tackle and the end thing. Like obviously Oakman has been fantastic, and he is, kind of like if an all-star is a guy who changes games, right? Like not just a like steady guy, but like somebody who really pops and makes memorable plays. Oakman is an all-star. There's just no way you can deny that statement. He is a CFL defensive line all-star.
And yet, and we didn't even talk about Flo Rebolade.
Yeah, like Ryan Hunter. I mean, like Hendricks is a consummate professional. He fits perfectly into coach's system. I certainly hope coach does not try and take him when he leaves. He's just really when they let him pass rush, he's great at pass rush. He's terrific at the run. He's always in the right position. He sets the wall. I mean Hendricks is so good for the team. I just think I'm gonna say Hendricks, but I can understand an Oakman vote.
And I would go Rebolade over Oakman, but that's the thing. You've got so many options.
Cooled down a little bit.
He has, but I think it's more that the teams have sort of adjusted and are doing things they don't want to do, but they're doing it to avoid getting sacked every snap. So I don't know, and I think both Hendricks and Flo are opening things up. Oakman opens things up. Like that defensive line is what makes
Hendricks,
this work.
He just does everything. He does everything. Yeah. I think he is. He's like a player's choice. I bet you if the players voted, they would vote for him.
So now we're on to defensive back, and you can't vote for Pickett. So what do you do? What do you do here?
It's hard. The Argos have had a lot of injuries, and there were certainly guys who would be right there, had they been able to play every game, who have had all-star stretches and they got hurt. If I have to pick one, I think, quietly, Mechie has had a fantastic season. He's been absolutely dependable and has a truckload of tackles. I like Mechie. I think Mechie has been an all-star.
And he's been a little bit like Ryan Hunter, too, where when they've needed to move somebody, it's Mechie because he's so talented. He's played defensive back. He's played Sam. He's moved all over the field to accommodate various different injuries.
He doesn't pop in games like some guys do. Like, you like Purefoy and some other players where you're like, whoa, they really kind of pop. But, for the Argos, he has been an all-star. And, for the coaching staff, he's a coaching staff all-star. They should have the coaching staff all-stars.
Yeah, they should. And guys that just didn't have enough playing time, like Amos and Robertson Daniel, guys that I think probably
Daniel was
would have
definitely
got.
on that.
Oh, he was
Daniel
on
was
track.
definitely on that path.
Yeah, no, for sure, but probably missed too many games. Kicker, this one, kicker Boris Beatty. Can we just sing the praises of Boris Beatty for a moment? Yeah. Is leading the league in punting average, leading the league in second in the league in field goal percentage. He was leading the league in field goal percentage until Sean White went 4 for 4 and retook the lead this past weekend. But he's right there with Sean White for the lead, and he's leading the league, not just this season, but historically in kickoff average. The three things he's been asked to do, he's been amazing at. And so for kicker, Boris Beatty is a no-brainer. But for punter, Boris Beatty's not eligible. And so even though he is actually, as it stands now, and he's been punting for a while now, I think he's got, 6 or 7 games punting under his belt, and he's to be number one in the league in that. That's saying something. So kicker has to be Boris Beatty. And punter, if you're looking to the Argos, John Haggerty is second in the league behind Boris Beatty. And so he's your guy for punter.
Yeah.
Special teams has got to be Javon Leake. There's much as there's great players. There's Kassar, there's Adebaboye, there's guys that have been great. Edward.
That would be my vote. My vote, obviously Leake has been fantastic and has earned a nickname of questionable worth. But he has been fantastic. He's been an absolute discovery. But, I wouldn't, I don't hate the Kassar vote either. Especially he's come on a little lately. Kick coverage has been massive. That's kind of the classic idea of the special teamer. Flies down the field and makes those plays that aren't necessarily noticed as they go quickly to commercial break. But I think Kassar has become what we felt he would be, which is an absolute special teams dynamo.
So that is your All-Star voting. Make sure you go vote, find the hidden All-Star ballot on the CFL website, go through it, vote for the Argos that you believe deserve to be All-Stars this year. And there are a number of them. And you don't have to take our advice, but that's our voting strategy if you want to follow along.
And to jump in there at the end, they have that fan favorite, what I'm not exactly sure what that's about, I guess, to kind of clean up whoever doesn't get nominated in their reduced nomination pool, kind of a catch-all technique. But if I were to nominate somebody for fan favorite, I don't know if it's a fan favorite, but for me, it's Qantas Tigers. I think his story, his inexperience, his ability to come in and become part of this team and sort of earn his way into the starting lineup, then became like a basically indispensable tool for coach to move around, taking guys out in one-on-one man play, coming up in the run. He's been unbelievable. So he's this fan favorite. I don't know if his name will ring out amongst the faithful, but I'm going to put one vote in for Stiggers.
And he's a guy that a 21-year-old, without ever playing a snap of college football, just went out and shut down Kenny Lawler and Geno Lewis in back-to-back weeks. Find someone else with that history.
He'll be in an NFL camp next year for sure.
Yeah, no, he will. All right, JB, no one should ever take gambling advice from us. However, we should weigh in on this next story. The Argos have been made heavy Grey Cup favorites at all the sports books now. To win the Grey Cup, the Argos are now plus 110, which is basically even money. Basically saying it's a coin toss, Argos winning the Grey Cup. To me, this is, again, this isn't a betting segment, but to me, that's just terrible value. But I think it speaks to how dominant they've been against anybody they've gone up against. And I think seeing Cam Dukes do what he did against the Bombers, I think only improved, or I guess improved their chances of winning, or in the sportsbook's view, really. Yeah, I mean, remember,
sportbooks, their line is designed to, as you well know, to generate the most action, not necessarily who they believe is going to win. They may be stirring that anti-Toronto pot out there and make that the anybody but Toronto bet a little more inviting.
There's some value, like, because Toronto's plus 110, Bombers are plus 165, which I don't think is good value at all either.
No.
But Lions at plus 475 starts to get interesting. Where it really gets interesting, if you want to really throw your money in the garbage, Stampeders plus 15,000.
Oh my God, Stampeders.
Stranger things have happened.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. I loathe them and Saskatchewan and put them both on a plane to the moon.
And how many Argos teams have we seen over the years that have just barely snuck into the playoffs?
Oh yeah, I mean the CFL, hot. Absolutely.
It's just 2 games.
Like
just
any other league, you can just get hot for 2 games and
you're in the Grey Cup. That's it.
Yeah, I mean the Argos have definitely stolen Grey Cups in their time, but yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I mean it makes sense. Being healthy, I think the Argos are certainly even with Winnipeg as favorites. I really do think they, barring an injury, they should get to the Grey Cup, and then in a game anything can happen. But I do think it's not hype. This is a very deep, very good team.
Drake has a new chain, and it's making people upset. And this is one story in a long line of stories that makes Argos fans upset, because Argos fans, very correctly so, believe that the Argos are forgotten about and should not be forgotten about, because they are the oldest team, the most successful team. Like, they are Toronto sports, and yet they get forgotten about time and time again. Drake's chain, if you haven't seen it, it's a CN Tower, there's a Raptors logo, there's a Blue Jays logo, there's a Leafs logo, there's not an Argos logo. I'm not surprised by it. And yet I can't help but getting irritated by things like this every time I see them, because the Argos just seem to get disrespected at every turn, and I can't get used to it.
Well, I mean, this goes back to 100 years ago. Again, one of my articles that has gone off into the Netherlands about the Argos needing a celebrity hero sponsor, Drake, the Argo Drake. Yeah, I'd love to see them try and figure that out, to see if they can get that. Surely MLSE has one of his numbers, if not his private number. Somebody has one of his numbers. If they can get Drake to shout out the Argos or wear an Argo hat in a video, maybe. But
I don't want Drake anymore.
I'd love to find their own. Well, because that's the thing. Like, you never know. Like, I remember, 1,000 years ago, Del the Funky Homo Sapien wore an Expos hat, and people were like, what was his Expos? And then, it kind of took off a little bit. They're always looking for that kind of stuff. Wouldn't surprise me if, like, wearing a CFL jersey in a video became a thing. So maybe they can ask Masai to make a call and ask him about that.
I remember the piece you wrote. Who I liked on your list? You had some great names on that list. And I think that was before, I feel like that was like before some of these guys' careers like really took off.
Margaret Atwood. I remember
Margaret Atwood is one that I love. Now her career was already, that had taken off much before your list and your article. But I do think there were, I think the Weekend you had on there too, didn't you? That was Weekend, before Blinding Lights.
Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, that's right.
I thought we, for sure, Sima Liu, before all that blew up.
Yeah. That was ahead of its time.
Yeah,
if only they jumped on the Weekend then.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to see them do it. I don't see any reason why they can't. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would try and get some Drake love first, and then move on, and try and find somebody else. But they got the phone numbers. Somebody's got the phone numbers in that building. And
just to add on to the disrespect too, this is another story that
if Pinball called Drake, come on, there's no one in the world is going to say no to Pinball.
It's true.
It's not possible. There's no chance you can say no to Pinball on the phone about whatever.
It is not possible.
No. So let's make it happen. Just get Pinball on the phone with Drake, and then next video, he's got that new Argo blue on, and then we're off to the races.
This past weekend, the Argos were serving dinner at the Salvation Army, and this is just this goes along with the Drake chain, because it's, again, went unnoticed, the mainstream media not paying any attention to that, But the Leafs doing the exact same thing end up all over the media. So that was just, I know I had a few different listeners that reached out and wanted to vent about those things. And so would tie them both into one segment. But yeah, we feel you. We feel the same thing. That is life as a Toronto Argonauts fan. It's constantly feeling like that. And the way to combat that is to keep bringing people out to games, keep finding a friend that hasn't been to a game and having them join you for one, because that does work. We've seen attendance increase. We've seen the involvement that the Argos have had with the youth around the GTA, and that has slowly started to work. And it is going to be slow. It's not an overnight fix, but that's what you can do. Is your part is bringing people down to the stadium, have them tune in, get them to watch the game on TV. It's fantastic entertainment, and that's how you can contribute to this. So at some point down the road, maybe not in our lifetimes, they're right up there with every other team. Let's get into the game itself, JB. Injuries first. So a couple of injuries of note that I want to talk about for the Argos, and then we'll kind of go through the Red Blacks too. But Dejan Allen has not practiced the last couple of days. That I'm not really surprised about. So we didn't get a chance to talk about this on the last pod because I didn't know for sure that it was an injury. He came out at halftime last game. He played, I think he played the last snap of the first half. Came out at halftime, was replaced by Hunter, moved over to tackle. And I didn't think too much of it. But some people spotted him with a walking boot on the sideline. I still didn't think much of that. And I still don't until we hear word otherwise. I think that probably if he was able to play through it, I think this is probably something that if this were a playoff game, he'd probably be playing. Again, I don't know anything. This is just based on having seen him out there clearly playing through it. Makes me think that this is just, let's get him 100% healthy. There's no need. Why would you have him play the rest of the season at all? He's good. He's played all season long. So even if he's a bit nicked up, but he could play, sit him. Don't even think about playing him this week, but I wouldn't even think about playing him the rest of the season. Deshaun Amos did not practice. That is not a surprise. Jamal Peters still working his way back. Cam Phillips did not practice. He's on the injury list. Tiggy Sanko is one that is interesting. He did not practice either yesterday or today. The reason this is interesting is because of how it affects their global players, because I've already got John Haggerty out. Now I think he practiced on a limited basis this week. Yeah, he did. The last 2 days he's limited. But again, I wouldn't mess around with that. We're talking about a knee. Leave him on the shelf too. Get him back to full health. Even if he can practice limited, that's not the same. So maybe they end up bringing him out as a holder again. What I would rather see, they've got a couple other globals on the roster. Bring out Gachuz, bring out Falola, one of those two guys. Gachuz, I think I would actually like to see. But Boris Beatty is like super hot right now, so I don't know if you want to mess with that. What would you do? Do you want to see Gachuz as the global, or would you go Falola so you don't have to mess with Boris Beatty?
Yeah, I think you can. I think you can rest Beatty. I think he's been around long enough and a pro long enough. That's not going to mess with him.
So then I think that's what you do then. If you feel good about that, you're more a special teams guy than me, then that's probably the move I'd make this week to get your global player. For the Red Blacks, I don't know what their strategy is going to be this week. I just looking at their injury report, Dustin Crum is going to be able to go. I think he went full in practice today. Brendan Dandridge did not. And Justin Howell did not. I don't know. I would imagine you're going to see a Dustin Crum-led Red Blacks team that looks pretty similar to the team they put out last week. There's a lot of pressure on the Red Blacks over the next couple of weeks. You can tell just even from what's in the media just today about Bob Dice and how coach is being a bit surly with the media. He feels the pressure clearly. And there needs to be some sort of change. Like last week was embarrassing. They got annihilated, like flattened in a game that mattered a lot to them, and they just got crushed. And so I do think they're going to come out with the best that they've got for these last two games, both of which are against Toronto. I think probably coaches are feeling the pressure to win those in order to maybe save their jobs, maybe to salvage the season in some way. So I think anyone that can play probably does this week for the Red Blacks. All right, JB, let's get into our game preview. And I want to ask you a philosophical question here. And I think that kind of will suffice for our game preview. And that's, does the season record matter? And what I mean by that is that the Argos have an opportunity here to go 16-2 if they're to win these last 3 games, which would tie a CFL record for most wins in a season with the 1989 Edmonton Elks. And it would also set a new mark for the best Argos season of all time. The Doug Flutie-led Argos were 15-3 twice. This could best that. Is that record worth it to you?
No.
Care to expand?
No, I mean, no, I don't think so. I don't like. I mean, I don't think no one is ever going to compare this team, regardless of what happens to the Flutie team. The Flutie team will always, resonate in a way as kind of an eternal team. Nobody's going to talk about this team in that same breath. So, I don't think it matters. I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to put them on the same level in anybody's mind. And I think the less pressure you have on being, the greatest regular season finish of all time, the better. I don't think they need that. I'm okay if they lose a game or two here. Let's just, very good regular season. We don't need to reach for any record that nobody is going to, talk about or care about, because you're not going to replace this Flutie team with any team. Like, it just doesn't have the same feel.
I agree with you, but check again the last week of the season. If the Argos are 15-2 at that point, I may change a little bit in terms of what I feel, especially knowing there's a bye week on the horizon. So we'll see. Right now, I agree. And one little fun fact that I came up with while looking at the different records, all-time records, 2 stood out to me that I think Argos fans will enjoy. At the very bottom of the list, in terms of worst records of all time, you find 2 entries from the Hamilton Tiger Cats. One in 1949, where they went 0-12, which is, and not that you can get a worse percentage than going 0-6, but 0-12 is just that much more fun. And of course, the 1-17 season that we remember from 2003, which is like the baseball equivalent of winning 9 games in a 162 game season. So those I just saw as I was scrolling through that and kind of had a chuckle, and I thought, I bet there's some Argos fans that want to know. It's time for OCDC. OCDC is brought to you by the Business Barbershop and Spa. They invite you to experience Etobicoke's premier licensed men's grooming lounge for hair, face, and body care, celebrating 10 years in the Kingsway. They are just steps from Royal York subway station in the Kingsway. Take a trip to Royal York. It's a short walk. Get in there, book a haircut appointment. You won't regret it. It is the best place in Toronto to get your haircut. Check out the barbershop, the Business Barbershop and Spa in the Kingsway. All right, JB, let's get to it. I'll start things off with Ottawa, and obviously I'm looking at the offensive side of the ball. Ottawa wants to set a tone this week. They want to set this for not just this week, but for their last game of the season in week 21. And I think it starts this week with a pounding running game. I think if you were going to beat Toronto in some way, and I don't think Ottawa will, but I think if you're Ottawa, and I'm thinking as Ottawa right now, I want Toronto to start deciding that it is not worth it to keep their players in this game. And I think you do that by trying to physically beat up on this team because they're playing for something and you're not. So you come out hitting hard. It's Devontae Williams, it's Crum, it's Milanovic Litre, and you are pounding the run game. You got play action off of that, but even your receivers, aside from being receivers, get them physically blocking downfield. Get them not just stock blocking, but attack blocking, like going after DBs downfield, and just make this about physical domination from the opening snap. And it's less about anything else to me. It's not about X's and O's. If I'm Ottawa, I want to send a message this week, and that's how I would do it. What do you do for the Red Blacks defense, JB?
Well, the Red Blacks have a pretty decent front. They've been able to they've not been able to stop the pass, but they have been able to stop the run, and they have been pretty good at getting after the quarterback. I think you have to kind of lean into who you are. So, I think you're going to run blitz. You're going to send as much heat as you can at Kelly. What do you have to lose? I think that's you have to lean into your strength and hope that you can get there. As much as you can, and and hope that you're able to put a little pressure on that offensive line that has not given up very many sacks. So it's a tall order. I mean, Ottawa does not win many games, so I think it's going to be hard for them. But they do have a decent front, and I do think they have the talent to get after Kelly. I don't see what else you can do other than blitz like crazy and hope for a rush pick, but they have not been good at stopping deep passes. They've not been good at stopping passes into the end zone. From a defensive coordinator point of view, I don't have a lot of confidence in Ottawa being able to stop Toronto. But you do have to try and make them one-dimensional, and they have been able to control the run. So I think you really lean into that and hope for the best.
Hope it's really windy.
Yeah, I mean, I know hope is not a plan, and also Ottawa does not win many football games, so I think those two are probably connected.
Switching over to the good guys, for me, and this is, I've got a really clever plan this week, JB. It's hiding in plain sight. Nobody in the world is going to be looking at Toronto's film this week for the purposes of game planning in the playoffs. Because every team in the CFL that is headed to the playoffs knows that Toronto's not going to show anything. Toronto's not going to give you anything worth a cent in this week's game. There's no motivation for them to. If anything, they're going to throw you off. They're going to mislead you. They're going to plant seeds that they want you to study and to look at. With that in mind, I think you actually work on your stuff this week, because I don't think anyone will even notice. I think you work on things that you're actually hoping you can do something with. This is a really, it's a little bit of a risk, but again, it's not me actually doing the coaching. So for this segment, I want to do that. I want to work on the stuff that I want to see more of from Toronto, especially if all the starters are out there when they won't all be out there at receiver, but a bunch will be. And so work on rub routes. That's something I want to see Toronto do better, especially short yardage. Work on quick passes out of bunch formations. That's something I want to see Toronto do a bit more of. Work on your draw plays. These are things that I feel like they can add to their arsenal and clean up a little bit. And so with nobody watching, this to me is absolutely the time to do it. Nobody is going to look at this film more than just with a cursory glance, because it should be garbage in theory. And so I think there's the opportunity to outsmart everybody and run all the important stuff that you want to work on.
And you've got yourself a nice little TSN catchphrase.
Which is?
Nobody's watching.
God, that is...
Argos, Ottawa. Nobody's watching.
That is not doing any good for anybody. What is your Toronto plan on defense, JB?
Yes, Ottawa is not very good offensively. They are pretty good at running the ball. We talked about it. Like, they definitely have the makings of a good team. They are not just a terrible team, like say Ottawa was back in 2019 when Ottawa and Toronto were cellar dweller buddies. There is talent there. I think that they do run the ball well, and I think Toronto's an incredibly hard team to run the ball on. So that is going to be a bit of a problem for them. I think defensively, I know nobody's watching, but defensively, I don't see any need to get out of base, really. I think you're looking to, maybe you're playing like a cover two shell. That's the beauty of being a good team. Like, you don't need to scheme up. You can just, our cat's better than your cat's. And I know that sounds like a bit of a cop-out, but like, honestly, I don't see any need to scheme up anything in a lab to stop Ottawa. I don't think they're I don't think they're very good at passing the ball. I think they're okay at running the ball, but I mean, they're not, if they get down early, they're not going to run the ball 42 times. So I think it's, yet another televised 12s exercise for the defense.
JB, it is time for Put Me Down for 20. While gambling can be a fun way for some to enhance their sports viewing experience, it's important to do so responsibly. Set a budget, never bet more than you're happy to lose. And if you or anyone you know is developing a problem with gambling, you can call the Ontario Problem Gambling Helpline, 1-888-230-3505. JB, you are down to your last 20 golden fleeces.
It's very exciting. Can I get to the end? That's the test now. The question without having to sign a marker with Zeus.
Yeah, you don't want to do that because I don't know. We had never really entertained this possibility when we decided to start with 200 golden fleeces at the beginning of the year, betting 20 a week. We thought, well, that'll be fine.
True. But then I feel like there were some tough beats in there, and that's the case I will make to Zeus if required.
All right, so I'm standing at 300 golden fleeces. You are at 20. I'll give you honors this week. No Argos bet right now because the line isn't up at all. No props bets are up right now. I think probably sites are waiting just to see who's playing for the Argos because that's a little bit up in the air. The same thing happened last week. So we will put our Argos bets down, confirm them on social media so that you know what the play is going into it. So with your other 10 golden fleeces, what's the plan, JB?
Well, I'm gonna go with the BC Lions. I think that they're going to be able to get it done. But I don't like any of the games this weekend at all. But I think that BC is getting healthy. I think that they are a legitimate Grey Cup contender. I think they are legitimately the third best team in the league. I might eat those words, but I think right now they're the third best team in the league. So I have BC 1-13 at plus 125. I think they can get that done.
My golden fleece bets are based on a little bit. It was based as what I was going to do anyway. But seeing your BC bet, I kind of felt like, well, that confirms it for me. I've got the Hamilton Tiger Cats plus 160 because I feel like everything you touch right now, what's the opposite of gold?
Well, no, in my defense, what will probably happen like last week is that the stupid Lions are going to win by 17.
Right.
Not that I will get it that wrong, but that it'll be right, just slightly not right. Where I can't believe, not the Ram, but I can't believe Edmonton didn't score a garbage time touchdown to win me that bet.
They didn't score any points at all in the second half. Yeah.
No, come on. I mean, it was just made for a garbage time touchdown. That was pretty gross.
So, yeah, my 10 golden fleeces on Hamilton plus 160. Mm-hmm. My other 10, I'm going to take Toronto by whatever the spread is because I do think that the Argos are going to put up some numbers against Ottawa. And I think it will beat whatever that spread is, but I'll confirm that on social media as well. JB, it's time for our CFL picks, and here's an area where you are doing well, and you're ahead of me now with a 3-1 week last week. You were at 46-25 on the season.
There we go.
I'm at 45-26 on the season, looking to get.
I really ponder the juxtaposition of those two betting records, but nonetheless.
So let's go through our games this week. BC at Hamilton. I'm taking Hamilton, like I said. You were taking BC. We already established that one. Saskatchewan at Calgary. I have no idea. I have no idea what to do with this. This is the
moon game.
Yeah.
Put them on an airplane like Airplane 2 and send them to the moon, never to return. I have not been right once this season with either of these teams.
That's not true, but it's close.
Well, we'll see whenever you get around to quantifying that data.
So what are you going to take?
I'm going to take Calgary because Saskatchewan can go pound sand.
I'm also going to take Calgary because I just think it just feels like the story. Like Saskatchewan just needs one win. They've needed one win for the last 6 weeks.
I am not, speaking of that, I am not watching that game. That's going to be preposterous.
It's going to be amazing. Teams. If for those of you watching on YouTube, I've got the mini helmets behind me, which depict the standings in the CFL, the East Division, the West Division. I have not had to touch these helmets for the West since August 3rd, for the East since mid-July. I've not had to touch a single helmet because they've stayed there like this. We haven't even seen, Edmonton is back there. You can barely see them. Will this be the week that I have to move a couple of helmets? Will something change? So we'll see what happens. Does Calgary beat Saskatchewan here? I think so, but we'll have to see. Montreal at Edmonton. Here's another game I want nothing to do with. I'm going to take Montreal. I don't even know why. Montreal's good. I actually think they're the fourth best team in the league. I've never been blown away by them. They're not in the same tier as BC, Winnipeg, Toronto to me. They're just at the top of the next tier, or maybe they're in a tier on their own. And I think after that big win last week against Montreal, traveling across the country to Edmonton, it's tough, but I think I got to take Montreal. I think it's going to be a tight game.
Here, just to go back. Here's where these guys qualify for their moon trip. So Saskatchewan is 2-6 away from home. Calgary is 2-5 at home. Take these teams and get rid of them. Drive me bonkers. For that final game, the same deal. I can't believe Montreal is just going to keep rolling. I like them, but also they are a flawed team. I think Edmonton gets it together at home, and they get it done at home. I think they beat the Alouettes. I just can't believe the Owls are moving into that level of we're just going to win every game now. I like Edmonton there. I think those. I think they still have something to fight for. It's hard to tell. It could be 1, 2, 3 Cancun time, or 1, 2, 3 Banff time, or whatever it is one does in Edmonton. But so that's the wild card. Are the trailers packed? But I'm going to go with Edmonton right now to beat the Owls. But if the Owls win by 40, then we know that was an airport game.
And we're both going to take Toronto over Ottawa.
Yeah.
That leaves us with predictions. So what is the score? How does this one end? For me, as I said, it's a blowout. I think Toronto wins 38-13. That's what I've got written down. I think this one is over really early, and I think Toronto actually has an opportunity to get backups in early, and I think they put up points too.
I think I see it a little closer. I see Toronto winning 28-21.
One thing is how we'll end things today. And my one thing is I want to get Tavares Daniels more involved. He's been out of the picture for a little while. No, he's been starting, he's been playing, but he hasn't had a lot of targets lately, barely looked at last week. I think it's important for he and Chad Kelly to get back on the same page a little bit. So my one thing, 6+ targets for Tavares Daniels this week. What is your one thing, JB?
I'm going to go with a sack for Stiggers. I'd love to see a corner sack. I'd love to see that part of his game, see what that looks like. And I'd love to see if they take a look at that to see what his pass rush skills are. So you don't see a lot of corner blitzes. Certainly Peters was great. I'm going to go with that. Stiggers on a blitz for a sack.
That will just about do it for us on this pregame walkthrough edition of the X's and Argos podcast. Saturday, October 14th, 7 p.m., Ottawa Redblacks at the Toronto Argonauts at BMO Field. We'll see you at something in the water, or we'll see you at BMO Field for the game. For JB, this is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see you.